Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figure It Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today we're going to be talking a little Sega Dreamcast, specifically this, the Octopus Arcade Stick by a company called TR Fight Stick. At least I'm pretty sure that's what their name. They're based out of Turkey or Turkiya, and they were cool enough to send this to me for free for the purpose of review, and believe it or not, that's very special because this hasn't actually come out yet. In fact, this is currently a one of one. I've got the pink button edition that hasn't existed before. This project is ongoing on Indiegogo, and if it comes to life, everybody can buy it. But they were cool enough to send me a prototype unit that we can go ahead and talk about, and I can give you the lowdown. Now, before we do that, though, if you guys could do me a favor, please like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, as well as check out all my social media stuff on the description. I've got Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Patreon, Facebook, Spreadshirt, my travel channel. I appreciate the support on all those platforms. Thank you so much. But yes, the controller itself. So let's talk about this. Now, these guys were really cool. I had heard about this project before they had ever contacted me. I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. Then all of a sudden they reached out. They're like, dude, we know you love the Dreamcast. This might be your thing. And I was like, yeah, that actually sounds pretty cool. So what's the rundown here? Basically, what these guys are working on is an arcade stick that's going to be compatible with a whole bunch of different consoles. And if the project comes to light, becomes a reality, and they've reached additional stretch goals, there's going to be a ton of consoles that are supported. Now, I don't pretend to understand all the mechanics underneath. I believe they're using an FPGA and just kind of replicating, various other types of boards. I don't pretend to know that side of it. But what I do know is they intend to have a whole lot of compatibility. This particular version, the prototype version, is only compatible with the Sega Dreamcast because apparently that was kind of what motivated them to begin with, is they wanted a better arcade fight stick experience for the Dreamcast. Now, as someone who has a couple of the original arcade fight sticks, I'll say that they were fine. This one is definitely better, but I also have to stress that the one they sent me is a prototype. So there are certain things about it that are going to be very different from the final units, and I want to talk about that first and foremost. The most obvious is that the frame is 3D printed on this one. The final units will be, a nicer, more factory produced type of thing. Secondly, inside of the device, there's a micro SD card that's useful for firmware updates as well as data storage and things like that allow you to get access to files that you produce through your games. This particular one does have the micro SD card, except it's not accessible. It's inside the device, so in order to get access to it, I'd have to basically open the thing up, which I have no desire to do. There's really no reason for me to in this case. And of course, the fact that this particular one is only compatible with the Sega Dreamcast, whereas final units will be compatible with a whole bunch of different systems. And it's pretty nice. So on this one, it's got this nice plastic front with the octopus, which is the whole idea is that, it's got 8 tentacles and there's 8 buttons and all of that. And it's got this foam bottom part to give it, kind of a nice heavy base. This thing doesn't move around when I play it, which is nice. That's what you want in an arcade stick. It has additional buttons for a series of different functionalities. So these would be your face buttons that essentially replicate the various face buttons of the Dreamcast controller, and the triggers in some cases. The button configuration can change. That's kind of a factor. On the back, there's a little white button that replicates the start button. There's also this switch. Now this switch has I forget what the actual official symbols are, but let's just say the I, the O, and the 2, or the 1, the 0, and the 2. I leave it on the 2 mode because then the start button functions. If it's hitting the 0 section, then that's like some sort of fighter's default protection system. In other words, the start button doesn't function, so I leave it at that. This thing has a bunch of different configuration options. There's a thing called SOCD, I believe it is. Now, I'd never heard of this before because I'm not in the fighting game community, but I did a little looking into it, and apparently that particular term, the SOCD, is a type of fighting mechanic where basically if you have that mode activated, the fighting techniques off of the joystick can be a tad more precise, which the fighting purists, let's say the Smash community possibly, groups like that, people who are really into fighting games, would appreciate that being there. For me, it didn't really do anything special, and in some cases can cause incompatibility issues. So I personally don't activate it, but then again, I'm looking for more wide array of compatibility as opposed to finite specific games. And that's where the next feature comes in, is there's this thing called LS and I believe it's DP. By default, it will be in DP mode, which is essentially digital button configuration, but you also effectively have the option to switch to analog. Now, the reason that's there is so that you have, again, compatibility. Most Dreamcast games are going to require the digital one, but there will be some cases where the analog one is preferred for X, Y, and Z reasons, so they give you the option to do that. It took me a little while to kind of figure this out, and I even had to talk to them about it because I was having certain issues, but they're like, once they kind of explained it, I was like, oh, that actually makes sense. So I typically leave it on DP, which is what it it defaults to. I typically do not activate SOCD. And then you have the turbo button. For the turbo button to function, you basically hold it down and then press the button you want to map it to, and then it'll start to flicker and stuff so you know it's activated, and then from there you can use turbo functionality. Again, not something I've ever really used, but it's there for people who care about it. Another feature that was pretty obvious on it is you'll see this screen. This is actually a Dreamcast VMU replica. This is an LCD screen that actually will show you, like anything if you ever played on the Dreamcast and your VMU showed you displays, this would actually do that, but it's like a much nicer, more modern screen. It's backlit, it looks great, and it also has additional like information displayed on there. But one of the coolest bonus features is the fact that they actually built in, I believe it was 8 memory cards. And the way you access those is by default it'll be at card 0. Actually, it might be 9. No, I think it's 10. I don't even remember. I think it's 10. But it'll be at card 0 by default. And so in order to swap between them, this is a little tricky, and this kind of took me a minute to figure out. You basically hold down what they call 4D and 4K, which are the 2 buttons on the end there. You hold those down, you hold down the start button, which means the start button mode has to be active, so I keep it on the 2, as I was talking about. And then between there, after that, once you're holding those down, you use the joystick to cycle between cards. Therefore, basically, if you have this, it's unlikely you would ever need any sort of memory card, and that's also why they didn't put a VMU slot on it, because it would be unnecessary, because you would not need it, as you would have access to the saves. And again, on the final units, you'll be able to access the micro SD card, so if you want to take the saves and put them on a PC or whatever it is, you can do that. But also, it's compatible with, of course, other controllers, so if you want to move game saves between, just like the Dreamcast always originally did, you have that option as well. So, very, very cool. So, the other thing is, it obviously has a way to interface with the Dreamcast. Now, I've never seen a cable like this. They included a cable that basically is like a broadband cable on one end, and on the other end, it's just a Dreamcast controller cable. So, very important to have that, otherwise it wouldn't work at all. So, we're going to go ahead and boot it up, and I will show you some of the basics. Now, this particular Dreamcast is what I call my ultimate Dreamcast. This one has the HDMI mod done to it. It also has the mode installed, which is an ODE, basically replacing the disk drive so you can play all the games digitally. And on top of that, I put a 2 terabyte SSD in there that houses the entire library and then some. So you'll get, in my case, it boots to the BIOS screen. So if I can just, as you see, it immediately works. And I can just go past that screen. And on the screen here, you'll just see it's in digital mode. It's accessing card 0. It says it's a player 1. And then, of course, you see the little mode boot up there, which is, of course, much nicer than it actually looks on a Dreamcast. So then I've got my various folders. Now, if you really want to, you can bail out of this and go to the Dreamcast boot menu, the standard one. And then from in there, you can more easily access this. So I'll try to show you. This is kind of hard to do. But basically, if I do this... Yep, so it swaps between cards. So swapping memory cards constantly, no problem at all. But let's go back into the mode menu. So I'm gonna reset everything here. And inside, once we get here, I'm going to show you something I decided to play with it. So the compatibility on games can be kind of hit or miss. They will admit to you that this is really obviously designed for fighting games first and foremost. And they will also claim a lot of shmup compatibility, so like Ikaruga and Under Defeat and Trezeal and obviously the indie games as well. There's a ton of shoot-em-ups and fighting games on the Sega Dreamcast. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to focus on another thing, which is the Atomiswave conversion. So we're going to open that folder up. Now, I did try some other games. I just want this to be very clear. I tried Crazy Taxi, because Crazy Taxi is a famous arcade game. I figured it would work really well. I was having issues getting it to boot, and apparently that has something to do with the whole digital versus analog thing. So if you want to tinker with it more, you might be able to get it, but I brought this to their attention, and they said, yeah, the future firmware updates and things like that would address problems like that, but in general, it shouldn't really have that problem. But again, they're claiming that this is really best used for fighting games and shoot-em-ups, not necessarily other stuff. Other stuff is just kind of like a bonus, so I guess I would approach it that way. But inside, as I mentioned, we have Atomiswave games. Now, if you've never heard of Atomiswave, don't feel bad. I hadn't even heard of it until a couple of years ago. And I should probably do a whole video on this, but here's how I'll just kind of truncate it. In 2003 or so, the Sega Dreamcast was pretty much done completely, and Sega was still in the arcade business, so they were deciding, like, okay, what's our next line of arcade cabinets? They essentially recycled the Dreamcast hardware with just a couple of tweaks, and then they made some new games specifically for that, and that was all she wrote. There was only like 20 games or something like that. A few years ago, there were some people, very smart people, who figured out that with just a couple of changes, they could actually get those games to run on the Dreamcast, particularly if you have an ODE installed, hence this list of games. So these are actually arcade games. Half of them are like fighting games too. what do you know? An arcade fighting stick on the Dreamcast. That sounds perfect. So we're going to go with King of Fighters Neo Wave here. So give it a second to boot up. We can go past the, like I said, start button works just fine. You go there. Now the Octopus Wave games are obviously hit and miss as far as like their read speeds, because again they weren't really meant to run on the Dreamcast, even though they basically are Dreamcast hardware. So I know this game in particular will just kind of hang on a black screen for a minute and you'll think it's busted, but no, it actually does work. Eventually it'll prompt you with some sort of screen that says like, oh yeah, no, game loading. This game's actually also available on the original Xbox and I think the PlayStation 2. There you go, now loading. So it's kind of interesting to find out like years later there's also a Dreamcast conversion of it. I don't think the GameCube ever got it, at least in that era. So, but yeah, technically this would be like the arcade perfect version, as odd as that might sound, is now available on the Sega Dreamcast. If you guys want to see a video on the Octopus Wave stuff, let me know. I'd be very curious because I'd be happy to do it. But yeah, anyway, so you see the game boots up just fine. So you press the start button. And I'll just try to play a quick match here. I love fighting games, but I'm not very good at them. So we're going to go with, I don't know, Super Cancel. And I'm going to play as Terry Bogard because I actually know his name. He was always my favorite SNK character. Let's see. Who else? What do I want to be? Yeah, I like this guy. Big fat dude. Reminds me of myself. And, oh, okay, I ran out of time. Don't lollygag. Anyway, so, yeah, I'll just pick whatever, doesn't matter. We'll start our sequence. And I'll try to play a little bit of this. Keep in mind, I am playing it at, like, an angle and stuff. But, yeah, here we go. Oh, I'm getting my butt handed to me. But I also can't really see what I'm doing, so that's not really fair. Anyway, this isn't a video about the quality of the game exactly. It's just kind of about the arcade stick. And as you can see, it works just fine. Yeah. But I'm just terrible at it. I'm not that bad. Although I am pretty bad. Alright, we'll wait till I lose, which is probably about to happen. Yeah, I lost. Anyway, the way the game works is you have 3-on-3 fighters. You kind of get it. But, yeah, point is, the arcade stick itself works very well. But again, this version is a prototype, so any sort of issues I was having with it, which I admit I had a bunch at first because I was like having issues like, hey, it's like not responding here, what's this about? And that's when I learned about the whole digital versus analog thing. And yeah, anyway, I worked it out with them and I told them that you might want to kind of make this more easily accessible out of the box. More clear instructions, that kind of thing. The extra features and all that are nice, but they can be a little confusing, so that's why I wanted to kind of break them down to you. So the nice settings for the more casual gamer with this thing, I don't mean casual gamer, but casual fighting player, let's put it that way, somebody who's doing it for fun, not competitive reasons. You would want to keep it up in the 2 mode, have your start button work, and then probably leave it in digital mode, probably not use SOCD, and then just kind of be aware of how the additional memory cards work, and you're good to go. So it's been a lot of fun playing with it. So a huge shout out to TR, the Fight Stick guys. The Octopus thing is really cool. If you guys want to check it out, there will be a link in the description to their Indiegogo, and you can check it out for themselves. And hopefully the whole thing gets produced, and then in like a year from now, I can do a video on the final version. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and please like this video if you can. Comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, and check out all the social media stuff in the description. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, Travel Channel. Appreciate the support on all those things. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.